Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Bearded Iris, here to talk some NIT. Vanderbilt hosting UAB to the NIT Final Four in Vegas on the line. Vanderbilt has come off a pretty dramatic come-from-behind win to beat Michigan to get here. UAB has had a tremendous season, got a high-profile player in Jelly Walker, and now these two teams meet in Nashville on Wednesday night with the chance again to go to the Final Four, Blake.
They do. Down to 8 in the NIT. And the UAB winner will play either Cincinnati or Utah Valley. That's the other quarterfinal. I think these are back to back on Wednesday on ESPN2. So you've got that on that side of the bracket, and then you've got Oklahoma State, North Texas, and Oregon and Wisconsin, which I think is intriguing there to have one of those two teams headed that direction too. So yeah, it should be interesting to see how this one plays out. Obviously, Andy Kennedy's done a great job of his alma mater there, and no surprise that he has them where they've been. I mean, they've won at least 22 games every season. Now they've got back-to-back 27-win seasons. Could obviously eclipse that with a win here, but yeah, I mean they got players, and you need players to have success, but they got one in particular talked about in Walker, and yeah, he's really good. He's the real deal, and that will be priority number one for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they've also got KJ Buffin, who followed Kennedy from Ole Miss. So there's that. But let's talk about Vandy for just a minute. The Commodores have lost Leon Robbins, but have played really well since. Vanderbilt really at this point is dependent on 4 or 5 players. It's guard heavy. Tyron Lawrence has kind of carried the way along with Ezra Mannion. Yeah, I mean, the offense has changed, but it's still a pretty good offense even without Liam Robbins.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just like, yeah, I feel like it's been a while now since he hasn't played. That would have been um, what was the first game he didn't play? Was that the Kentucky game? Was that the first one
He
he didn't
went
play?
out 3 minutes into the Kentucky game. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And they won that one.
yeah, so they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What 6-1, 7-1? I can't add right now. 7-1, I think, without him. So yeah, I mean they've obviously just playing that many games now without him, you get a little more used to what everyone needs to do and kind of what the rotation looks like without him on the floor. And but yeah, I mean they just keep winning. I mean, what else do we say at this point? I mean, all 7 of those wins are by I think 9 points or less, so single digit wins, but they just find a way, and that's kind of what I put on whatever day it was they played. Was that yesterday or the day before? Yeah, I mean they just keep finding ways to win, and that's really what the game comes down to. Is we talked about maybe the factor of them not making the tournament had something to do with the fact that they just didn't win games by a lot of points, but they win, and they've won a lot of games. I mean, they've lost. Think about that. They've lost 2 games since February 1st after the 57-point loss to Alabama. They've only lost 2 games since. And so they're going on a month and a half with only 2 losses in there. And yeah, I mean, it just speaks to what, we've talked about just all the guys that have made plays. Lawrence, Magnon's made plays, Jordan Wright. Just that's what you want to see. I mean, that's what they were going to have to do. I mean, Colin Smith, we talked about the emergence of him. And yeah, just a wild, wild win against Michigan. And just looking at how they play now, I mean, there's just a confidence there. I think specifically, on both sides of the floor, their defense has gotten better. We've talked about that down the stretch. They play better defensively. Obviously, when Robbins was in there, that added an element they don't have right now. But their offense is just clicking, and they're just able to make those plays because we've seen multiple guys now step up and just make big shots, and that's why they just keep on winning.
By the way, I said KJ Buffin followed Andy Kennedy from Ole Miss. Obviously, that's not right. Kennedy's been gone longer than that, but Buffin did transfer from Ole Miss. But anyway, with that aside, these are 2 really good offensive teams, both top 50 in KenPom in offense. UAB much better defensively than Vanderbilt. What are you looking for in this matchup? What are you looking out to see as maybe a determining factor in who wins?
Well, I mean, I think again in a game like this where it's, you know, we always say the NIT is hard to figure out because it's a matter of do teams want to be there. Well, we're past that stage now. Like these two teams have proven they want to be there and they played pretty well. And I mean, Walker's coming off of what probably one of his worst games of the season. He only had 5 points against Morehead State. He's 1 of 12 from the field. But guess what? They still beat Morehead State by 18 points. So it kind of speaks to, all the attention is going to be on Walker. And as I said, I mean, he's just a tremendous player. Not long ago, he had 41 against Charlotte in that double overtime game they had. I mean, just look up and down. Like he scored 30 points multiple times this season. Started the season with 38 points against Alabama State. And even, go back to last year, right? We saw multiple 40-point games from him. He's just a guy that can score. He's going to take a lot of shots, and that's just what you know to expect. Like that he's going to get a lot of shots up, and it's a matter of trying to defend, knowing that he is kind of the driving force of their offense. There is no two ways about it. You can look at the other guys, whether it's Buffin, like you talked about, Gaines, Jemison, guys like that will contribute. Those are all double-digit type scorers who can also kind of add their own flavor to the game, where they're they're not going to take as many shots as Walker does, but they are still very good players and very talented players that can score. So I think that's a challenge for Vanderbilt. We talked about, right, how much better they've gotten defensively seemingly down the stretch. They're just able to make some of those key stops and those kind of things, but this is a team that will absolutely challenge you in a variety of ways offensively, just because they have the you know tremendous playmaking ability of Walker, but they've also got guys around him that have also proven they can step up whenever, with the understanding that the team's going to be game planning around Walker, right? So that's going to open up the possibilities for these other guys that we talked about. They're going to get their opportunities. And that's where, you see a KJ Buffin go off for, what was it? I think in Southern Miss, he had 26. Um, just games like that. Those are games that are possible for those guys, knowing that, you're going to have that opportunity. And obviously someone like Jemison, rebounding wise, I mean, that's someone, he's 7 foot. So just a tough player just in terms of what he can do. And I think he's what, Chris, like 7 foot 255, something like that, 260. So yeah, I mean they present a lot of challenges, I think, for Vanderbilt. And to me, it's all about the defensive side of the floor and figuring out how you're gonna guard this team, because they got a lot of ways they can beat you.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting is I think the NIT a lot of times is who wants to be there, and usually when you get to this point, it's teams that want to be there. UAB, this is the fifth most experienced team in the country, according to Ken Pomeroy. So these guys, a lot of them playing their last college ball, probably wanting to go out in style. I think Memorial Gym will have a lot of people there. Vanderbilt fans have generally been jazzed for this NIT. I think for Vandy, one more key is where you get to ending this thing. I think finding a third score. I'm not going to say the offense is punchless without Liam Robbins, because it's not been that at all. But sometimes they find a couple guys, and sometimes Jordan Wright steps up for 20. Sometimes he gives them 4 or 5. I think, to me, when you're looking at this game from a Vanderbilt standpoint, you want to make sure you've got that third score. And I think maybe how he plays or doesn't play could be a key here.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to have scoring, I think, to to play with UAB. I'm going to look it up because I didn't look it up actually from a national standpoint, but I am going to look it up real quick because I'm more curious than anything. I know we talked about just certain SEC teams in this category this season, but I'm curious to see where UAB ranks. I know they've got to be near the top 10. I want to say I looked at it a while back. They were around 14 or 15 maybe. Yeah, so they're 10th in the country in points per game, 81.5. So yeah, I mean, that's, again, that kind of shows you, I think, like you said, if you're Vanderbilt, you have to score points, because I don't, right? We just said it. Even if Walker doesn't have his usual 20 something point game, they've proven they can still put up 77. And, even just if you just take that one game they just had, like, they can score, other guys can score too. So yeah, Vanderbilt's got to score here. I mean, that's, it sounds pretty simple, but they've got to have big games out of their guards specifically, I think. Again, knowing kind of what they're going to face on the other side. with, the group that you're going to see over there, like we talked about, whether it's, Walker, Gaines, and so forth. So yeah, I mean, the Vanderbilt's gonna have a big game out of those three guys specifically. But it'll probably take a something else elsewhere, I think, just to kind of have another guy step up. And like I said, maybe that's a Colin Smith type thing. I think that's probably a good choice. Um, you know, because again, I think he's gonna have to have a good game too, Chris, because like we said, they've got some, you know, size on the other side. And I think, with Laura Brown as well. And so I'm just I think it's a great matchup. Like when you really just look at it, like I think this is just a. I mean, I know everyone's oh, it's NIT, whatever, but like
It'll
these are
be
two good
fun. This will
teams.
be a
Yeah,
fun basketball game to watch.
yeah, these are two good teams, and I think it is going to be a lot of fun because there's a lot of different storylines you could point out. Like I said, whether it's how Vanderbilt guards Walker, what do they do with the size of Jemison inside? Keep in mind, UAB is also a good offensive rebounding team. And we know in the SEC, Chris, and especially without Robbins, that can be something for Vanderbilt, perhaps. They're going to need to protect the glass because I think if you give a good offensive team like this extra opportunities, that is trouble in this game. So, it's a great matchup on paper when you just look at kind of the momentum for both these two teams because it's kind of the same, right? UAB's only lost 2 games since January 22nd. So Vanderbilt's only lost 2 games since February 1st. So you've got two teams that are clicking right now. So it's a fun setup here with this one.
Ken Pomeroy has got Vanderbilt as a 1-point favorite in this. Kind of hard to pick against the Commodores based on how they're playing at home right now.
Yeah, I guess I'm having trouble with this
Or
one because
not.
man,
Yeah.
well, I mean, no, I mean, look, you said it's a 1 point. This is a
UAB
pick 'em
may
game.
have a
I
little
mean,
bit more scoring and plays at a fast tempo. And if you're Vanderbilt, I think that worries you a little bit because it might be able to do some things. And Vanderbilt's not a really good defensive team. UAB is much better. That's your case for UAB to win.
that's my only issue here is if Walker just goes off, and maybe it's a case where Walker just gets his and everybody else struggles, right? That's always a possibility too. If that happens, Vanderbilt can probably still win the game. But I do think it's knowing exactly defensively, and this is where I think we go back to the coaching. I've always said I think Jerry Stackhouse and his staff do a great job from just a game planning standpoint, especially during this run they've made. They've done a good job of putting themselves in position, even against some of these matchups. Right? We've said, "Oh boy, this does not feel like this is where it's where the road ends for Vanderbilt because this doesn't look like a great matchup." But they put themselves in a position where they've game planned really well and have found ways to win. Obviously, talking about the multiple Kentucky games, game against Tennessee, game against all like those kind of games. So yeah, I don't discount that they're going to be ready. I just think I would worry a little bit defensively here because I think this is just this is the kind of team where if they get hot and you're having to chase against UAB, I think that's hard to do because they do have someone like Walker who has played. I mean, how many minutes and has this guy played over the past? Gosh, Chris, I mean, this guy all the way. I mean, he's been in college 2018, right? So I'm looking back now. Yeah, 2018, 2021. Yeah, so he's just played so many minutes, and I think his experience in this game could be crucial for UAB. But I think this is a toss-up. I wouldn't be surprised either way in this game. I take your pick for me. Like I think this is. I know it's not the NCAA tournament, but you know what? This is a high level basketball game in mid March that I think if you're a basketball fan you want to watch because these are two pretty good teams and you've got some star power on each side based on what we've seen from these guys. So should be a lot of fun.
We'll be here to recap that one when it's done. We are previewing every single game involving SEC teams in the NIT and the NCAA tournament. Best way to get those, hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It's just a follow. And hit the like button. That helps our analytics. This is Southeastern 14 presented by Bearded Iris. It might also be presented by NyQuil pretty soon if I can't lick this cold. So apologies for my voice. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14. We'll see you again soon.